from Things from Another World, and we're kicking off Horror Month at TFAW.com with Dark Horse Editor-in-Chief and Abe Sapien writer Scott Allie. So, what made you the right writer for Abe Sapien?
Mike and I were just talking about what we wanted to do with the character, and we wanted to see more stories set in the Hellboy world that were more just sort of like small horror stories instead of the big, like, you know, like sort of army stories that we're doing in a lot of the BPRD stuff. We felt like what's happening in the series right now with the world literally going to hell was a good opportunity to do that kind of like old school Hellboy horror story, and that Abe was a character to do it with. And those are the things that Mike and I talk about the most, those kinds of stories and those kinds of movies and old comics. So we thought we could do it together, so Mike and I are co-writing it.
So you've been the editor for the Hellboy titles for years. You've been enmeshed in it almost from the beginning. What's the difference between editing and writing for you?
You know, I say this a lot in interviews, but it's sort of like, I'm a very hands-on editor, so on some of the books that I'm just editing, I'm giving a lot of input on the script and on the story, and so when it shifts from that to actually writing it, it's just sort of like a difference of degrees rather than like a whole different job, you know?
Abe has been a beloved character, you know, on BPRD for years, but now it seems like a lot of people are afraid of him. Can you tell us a little bit about his evolution, and should people be afraid of him?
Yeah, people are afraid of him because he was shot like 2 years ago in the comic. He was shot by a young psychic named Phoenix, who took one look at him and thought, the world's going to hell, the world's full with monsters, this is one of them, and I got a hunch that he's a bigger part of it than he even looks. And so Phoenix shot him and put him into a coma, and while he was in the coma, he started to transform into an even weirder looking guy than he'd already been. A lot of people looked at that and said, he's part of what's going on. He's part of what's bringing civilization to its knees right now, and we need to, you know, take a long, hard look at that. Abe came out of his coma and kind of saw the writing on the wall and said, I don't want them cutting me open to find out what I am, so I'm going to go find out what I am. So yeah, he's got a tough relationship with the Bureau now because some longtime friends at the Bureau know that he couldn't possibly have anything to do with all of this, while other people think, no, it's too clear that he is connected to it in some way.
So what other things does Dark Horse Horror have coming up that you're excited about?
This fall's a big push for the horror line. Every fall we've been doing a big push for the horror books, and whether it's the Mignola line or stuff with Steve Niles like Breath of Bones, we've got collections of last year's big horror launches like Colder by Paul Tobin and Juan Freya, Tim Seeley and Josh Emmons' Ex Sanguine, it just came out in a paperback, and we've got the Lance Henriksen graphic novel coming out in a hardcover in a couple of months. So a lot of the reprints are great, but we just launched a new series called Kiss Me Satan with Victor Gischler and Juan Freya, the artist from Colder, and that's a really fun new horror book. The Buffy books have just sort of gone on hiatus. Season 9 just wrapped up, so it's funny kind of doing this big fall horror promotion without having any of Joss's titles as part of it. That's different, but it's given us a chance to really try out some new weird stuff.
In addition to being a horror editor, of course, you've been a horror fan from the beginning. What do you think are some of the essential elements of a great horror story?
Suspense, leaving things to the reader's imagination, making the readers be invested in the characters. You don't necessarily need to love the characters or exactly like them, but you need to care. You need to be motivated and interested in them as human beings, and even if it's Abe and Hellboy, you need to be connected to them in that way. And if the storytellers don't take the time to do that, you can't really have horror. You can have violence and you can have monsters and all that, but you can't really have the emotional connection. That is what I like so much about horror stories.
Well, thanks so much for the interview.
Thank you.
You can find the latest issue of Abe Sapien on our site. It's out October 9th.